The Galactic Academy was a place where the greatest minds from every corner of the galaxy came to prove themselves. The walls were lined with the history of countless species who had risen to power and fallen, their legacies etched into the very foundation of the Academy. The most elite students trained here to become the future commanders, soldiers, and diplomats of their respective civilizations. Humanity was considered an anomaly in this world of stars. Earth, a planet deemed by the galaxy to be nothing more than a Deathworld, had given birth to a species that had no place in the galactic pecking order. Other species, with their advanced technology and centuries of history, were puzzled by humanity's rise. Earth was a hostile planet, a world where every living thing fought to survive. But despite the odds, humanity had survived. And now, humanity had come to the Academy to prove that they could thrive. It was during one of the Academy's toughest training sessions that Cadet Maya Ellis caught the eye of Cadet Commander Jalen Kaur. A tall, imposing figure with an air of authority, Jalen had seen countless cadets from all over the galaxy, but when he laid eyes on Maya, he felt a strange mixture of amusement and curiosity. She was human, from Earth, a planet known for its harsh environments, yet every species in the galaxy still regarded humans with a certain level of disdain. They were just too unpredictable. Standing at the front of the training hall, Jalen had just finished giving his usual speech. The cadets were getting ready for the day's exercise, which would test their physical endurance, teamwork, and adaptability. As he surveyed the room, he noticed Maya standing at the back, her posture perfect, her eyes locked on his. He couldn't help but ask, "You're from a Deathworld?" Maya didn't hesitate. Her voice was calm, steady, but there was a hint of a smile on her lips as she raised her hand. "Still alive, sir." The room went quiet. The other cadets glanced at one another, unsure how to react. Jalen, who had never been challenged like this before, raised an eyebrow. "Bold words, Cadet. Let's see if you can back them up." Maya's smile didn't fade. "I'll show you, sir." The days that followed were some of the hardest of Maya's life. The training sessions at the Academy were brutal, far beyond anything she had ever faced on Earth. She had grown up in a world where life itself was a constant battle for survival. Earth's predators, the harsh climate, the unforgiving terrain, they had shaped her into someone who knew how to push through any obstacle. But the Academy's simulations, with their alien environments and hostile, artificial conditions, tested her in ways she had never imagined. The first simulation was a simple exercise. The cadets had to navigate a series of obstacles, work together, and reach the designated goal within a limited time. But it wasn't as easy as it sounded. The environment was a strange jungle, filled with plants that seemed to move on their own, unpredictable weather patterns, and alien creatures lurking in the shadows. For most of the cadets, it was an overwhelming challenge. They struggled to keep up, panicked under pressure, and faltered at every turn. But not Maya. She adapted quickly, keeping her calm as she analyzed the situation. She moved quietly, taking advantage of the shadows, and used her environment to her advantage. She had faced far worse back on Earth, and she had learned to never underestimate the power of patience and persistence. Maya wasn't just fighting for survival. She was fighting to prove something to herself and to everyone around her. She wasn't going to back down. She reached the goal first, but it wasn't just the speed that impressed her instructors. It was the way she handled the challenge. She didn't panic. She didn't rush. She used her skills, honed by years of survival on a dangerous planet, to succeed. When she returned to the debriefing room, Jalen Kaur looked at her with a new sense of respect. "You managed to do what others could not. Impressive. But remember this, Cadet, survival is not just about getting to the finish line. It's about getting there while keeping the team together. A leader must always consider the well-being of their people." Maya nodded, not defensive but thoughtful. "Understood, sir." The next day, the challenge intensified. This time, the cadets were tasked with leading a rescue operation. They were dropped into a hostile environment where they had to extract injured allies, navigate a crumbling cityscape, and face enemy forces, all while racing against the clock. Jalen watched from the observation deck, his arms crossed as he monitored the cadets' progress. He had expected Maya to excel once again, but what he saw in the simulation was something more. Maya didn't just lead the team to the objective. She rallied her fellow cadets, giving orders with clarity, keeping everyone focused, and even putting herself in harm's way to ensure the safety of her teammates. She demonstrated what Jalen Kaur had been searching for in every cadet, the ability to lead when it counted. As the simulation ended, Jalen Kaur descended to the ground, his boots thudding softly against the floor. He made his way to Maya, who was catching her breath along with the others. "I see you're proving yourself, Cadet Ellis," he said, his voice devoid of mockery now. "You've got more than just the spirit of a survivor. You have the heart of a leader." Maya didn't say much, but the glimmer in her eyes was enough. She didn't need to boast or seek validation. She knew who she was, and she knew that her actions spoke louder than any words ever could. Weeks passed, and the intensity of the training only grew. Maya continued to shine, but there were moments of doubt, moments when she felt the weight of expectation. Other cadets, particularly from more advanced civilizations, questioned her methods. Some of them didn't understand how a human could hold her ground, let alone lead in these high-pressure situations. They mocked her at first, but Maya didn't let it affect her. She knew what she was capable of. One evening, after a particularly tough session, Jalen Kaur approached her again. "You're still standing," he said, his tone softer than before. "I'll admit, when I first saw you, I thought you were out of your depth, but you've surprised me, Cadet." Maya raised an eyebrow, meeting his gaze. "Still alive, sir." Jalen Kaur chuckled, a rare smile breaking through his usual stoic expression. "Indeed, still alive." As the final exam approached, the one that would determine who would graduate as the top cadet, Jalen Kaur found himself conflicted. He had seen many students rise through the ranks, but Maya was different. She wasn't the strongest nor the fastest, but there was something about her resilience, her spirit, that made her stand out. And in that moment, Jalen Kaur knew that humanity had more to offer than just survival. They had the strength to lead, to inspire, and to fight for a future no one could take away. Maya Ellis stood at the edge of the training field, looking out at the massive simulation arena. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from excitement. The final test was upon her, the one that would determine if she had what it took to become one of the Academy's top cadets. The stakes were higher than ever. She had faced down simulations that tested her endurance, her mind, and her leadership. But now, it was time to prove once, and for all that humanity's spirit could stand tall against the galaxy's toughest challenges. Today was the culmination of everything she had worked for. Today was the test that would separate the strongest from the weak. Behind her, the rest of the cadets were gearing up for the same challenge. But Maya knew something they didn't. They didn't know what it was like to survive on a Deathworld, to fight against impossible odds every single day. They didn't know what it was like to push forward when everything inside you was telling you to give up. Maya did. The rules were simple. The cadets would be dropped onto a hostile planet, a world filled with unpredictable terrain, hostile creatures, and dangerous environments. Their mission was to survive for a week while completing various objectives, missions designed to test their leadership, resourcefulness, and ability to adapt to the most extreme conditions. Only the most capable would make it out alive. Maya had been training for this moment her entire life. Growing up on Earth, she had faced creatures far more terrifying than any of the simulations the Academy could throw at her. Earth had shaped her into someone who knew how to survive when it seemed impossible. She was ready for whatever this test could throw at her. The moment the signal was given, Maya and the other cadets were transported to the planet's surface. The air was thick, heavy with humidity, and the sky above them was overcast, casting a dull gray light over the strange landscape. The terrain was rocky, jagged, and uneven, with thick forests of towering trees that seemed to hum with an unnatural energy. This was not a planet that welcomed life. It was a planet where survival wasn't just a challenge, it was a requirement. Maya immediately began to assess her surroundings. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. The planet was alive, but not in a comforting way. Every corner seemed to hold a hidden threat. But Maya didn't hesitate. She knew the drill. Stay calm, stay focused, and above all, keep moving forward. She reached for her communicator, quickly scanning the first objective. Locate and secure a supply drop hidden somewhere deep in the forest. It was a simple task, or at least it should have been. The key was navigating the terrain, avoiding dangers, and using every ounce of her training to stay alive. As she moved forward, Maya felt the first shift in the air, a low rumble that shook the ground beneath her feet. A roar echoed through the forest. Her body tensed. She had learned about the creatures of this world in the briefing, but nothing could have prepared her for the real thing. A massive, four-legged creature, covered in thick, spiked armor, burst from the trees. Its eyes locked onto Maya and it charged. The sound of its steps was deafening, and the air around her seemed to crackle with danger. Maya didn't hesitate. She dove into the underbrush, narrowly avoiding the creature's massive claws. The beast's roar echoed behind her, and she knew it wouldn't give up until it had her. But Maya wasn't going to let it catch her. She had faced far worse on Earth. She was faster, smarter, and more determined. As she sprinted through the forest, weaving between trees, she reached for the small, tactical device strapped to her wrist. It allowed her to track the location of the supply drop. She had a plan, and nothing was going to stop her. Minutes later, Maya found the supply drop hidden under a thick layer of moss. She quickly unsealed it, grabbing the necessary equipment. But before she could take a breath, the ground shook again. The creature was back, and this time it was angrier. Maya's mind raced. The only way out was to fight. She grabbed the small energy blade she had retrieved from the supply drop and prepared herself for the inevitable confrontation. The creature lunged at her, its claws swiping through the air with deadly precision. Maya dodged, using her agility to get behind the creature. She struck quickly, driving the energy blade into a gap between its armored plates. The creature howled, its roar shaking the ground beneath her. But Maya didn't back down. She pressed the attack, using everything she had learned to bring the creature down. With a final, powerful thrust, the creature collapsed, defeated. She stood over it, panting heavily, but her determination never wavered. She had survived. Again. And she had proven to herself that humanity was capable of far more than anyone had ever thought possible. Hours passed, and the simulation continued. Maya navigated through more dangers, faced more challenges, and always emerged victorious. She worked her way through the objectives with precision, leading her team when needed, and completing each task with an efficiency that impressed even the most seasoned cadets. As the final day of the test approached, Maya found herself standing at the last checkpoint. She had made it through the impossible, had completed every objective, but now it was time to face the final challenge, extraction. But as she approached the extraction zone, a new twist emerged. The ground beneath her feet shifted, and the sky above her crackled with an ominous energy. The atmosphere was unstable, and a storm was brewing. She activated her communicator, knowing that the extraction team wouldn't be able to reach her in time. She would have to make it out herself. But she had no fear. The odds were stacked against her, but Maya had always faced impossible odds. She had grown up in a world where survival was a constant battle, and she had learned to face whatever came her way. With one final look at the darkening sky, Maya started running. She dodged the crashing waves of energy, moved through the dangerous terrain with speed and grace. And as the storm raged behind her, she reached the extraction point. Her heart pounded in her chest as the transport ship arrived, its engines roaring through the storm. Maya climbed aboard, her body sore but her spirit unbroken. Back at the academy, the other cadets had either failed or struggled to meet the challenges. Maya, however, had completed everything, not just surviving, but thriving. As she stepped into the debriefing room, Cadet Commander Jalen Kaur looked at her with a new sense of respect. "You've done it, Cadet Ellis," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "You survived, you thrived, you led, you proved that humanity's place in the galaxy is earned, not given." Maya smiled, her eyes bright with determination. "Still alive, sir," she replied, "and I plan to stay that way." The galaxy had underestimated humanity. But now they would see that humans were not just survivors. They were leaders, and they would leave their mark on the stars. Maya Ellis had done it. She had completed the impossible, surviving the harshest training, earning the respect of the Academy's toughest instructors, and proving humanity's strength to the galaxy. Yet, as she walked through the halls of the Galactic Academy, she felt an odd emptiness within her. Her journey had never been about proving her strength or surviving the tests. It had been about something much deeper, proving that humanity was more than just a species of survivors. Humans were leaders. The final test was over and she had passed. But what came next? The answers were unclear. The galaxy had watched humanity take down the Entar Dominion, and now Maya's every move was being observed by every species across the stars. But being a leader wasn't just about surviving a fight. It was about inspiring others, making the hard choices, and standing firm when it mattered most. And deep down, Maya knew that the greatest test was yet to come. It wasn't long before the next challenge appeared. The Galactic Academy had prepared her for combat, survival, and leadership. But what they hadn't prepared her for was the political intrigue of the galaxy. Word had spread of the rising human influence, and soon, representatives from every corner of the galaxy were calling for a meeting with Earth's leaders. Maya knew that this wasn't going to be a typical diplomatic summit, not with so many species with so much at stake. As she made her way to the council chamber, Maya couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and dread. The stakes of this meeting were far greater than any training simulation. The leaders of the galaxy had grown wary of humanity's newfound power, and Maya, as a symbol of Earth's strength, was thrust into the role of ambassador. The weight of leadership had never been more tangible. She arrived to find the council chamber filled with representatives from the Kralrath, the Zorathians, and other prominent species. All of them had a vested interest in the growing human influence. Some saw it as an opportunity, others saw it as a threat. But what no one knew was just how far humanity had come, not just in terms of power, but in unity. Maya took her place at the front of the room, standing tall with a sense of quiet confidence. The room grew silent as she spoke. "Thank you for coming," Maya began. "Humanity has proven that we can hold our ground. We've shown the galaxy that we are more than just a species surviving on a hostile world. We are a force for peace, for justice, and for unity. But we are also a species that understands the cost of war. We are here not to dominate, but to work with you to build a future where we all thrive." The words felt true to Maya. She wasn't speaking just for herself. She was speaking for every human who had ever fought for freedom, for every life lost in the struggle for a better future. But as she finished her speech, she noticed the skeptical looks exchanged between some of the leaders. There was still hesitation. The Zorathian representative, Velantra, spoke first, her voice cool and calculating. "You speak of peace, Cadet Ellis, but the galaxy has learned the hard way that peace is not easily won. We've seen the power humanity holds. But you forget one thing, it's not just about strength. It's about control. Do you truly believe you can lead us all without turning into the very thing you fought against?" Her words stung. Maya had expected questions, but she hadn't expected the challenge to be so direct. Her mind raced for a response, but deep inside, she knew that this was the test, not of her strength, but of her vision. "I don't seek control," Maya said, her voice steady. "I seek unity. Strength isn't about dominance. It's about cooperation, mutual respect, and understanding. Humanity has fought for our place in the stars, and we are ready to lead by example. But we cannot do it alone. We need the cooperation of every species, every ally we've fought beside." Velantra looked at her with narrowed eyes but said nothing further. It was clear that her words had caused some doubt, but the seeds of change were planted. Now, Maya just needed to see if they could grow. The days following the summit were tense. Some species in the galaxy, particularly the Kralrath and the Zorathians, began to shift their stance toward Earth, intrigued by the possibility of forming alliances. Others, like the Zeorosians and a few of the more aggressive species, remained skeptical, afraid of humanity's power and unwilling to risk ceding control. Maya felt the pressure growing. The political landscape of the galaxy was shifting, and she was at the center of it. Her decisions, her ability to lead, would shape the future of the galaxy. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about finding a way to build a galaxy where no one ruled over another, a galaxy where every species had the opportunity to thrive. But Maya knew that it would not be easy. There would be challenges, there would be enemies, and most of all, there would be those who would test her just as they had tested her in the training halls. But she had faced worse before. Earth had taught her that when you fought for what you believed in, you never backed down. One evening, after a particularly grueling series of diplomatic meetings, Maya stood alone in the command center, watching the stars outside the observation window. The weight of leadership had never felt so heavy. But she also felt something else, determination. Humanity had fought too hard to get this far. They had endured, adapted, and now they were poised to change the galaxy for the better. She turned as the door behind her opened. President Marquez walked in, her expression thoughtful. "You've done well," Marquez said, her voice quiet but proud. "You've earned their respect, Maya. You've shown them what humanity can do." Maya smiled, though the weight of the responsibility still hung heavily on her shoulders. "It's not enough, though. We have to keep proving it. We have to show them we can do more than fight. We can lead." Marquez nodded, understanding the burden. "You will, we all will, but it starts with you. Your leadership is what will make all the difference." Maya looked out at the stars once again. The journey ahead was long and the road was uncertain, but she knew one thing for sure: humanity was ready. They were no longer just survivors. They were leaders. And they would show the galaxy that no matter how dark the future seemed, there was always hope as long as they stood together. In the days that followed, Maya continued her mission of diplomacy, working tirelessly to solidify alliances and strengthen humanity's place in the galaxy. But with each new challenge, she knew one thing: the galaxy had underestimated humanity, and they would continue to do so at their peril. Humanity had learned to fight, but now they had learned to lead. And in the end, that would be the key to their success. The weight of leadership never felt heavier for Maya Ellis than in the days that followed the summit. Earth had made its mark on the galaxy. Humanity was no longer just a fledgling species trying to survive. They had proven themselves, but what did that mean? To the galaxy, it meant that humans were no longer the underdogs. They were now part of a greater, often dangerous game. And Maya. She had become a symbol, not just for humanity, but for everything they had fought for. The Galactic Alliance was slowly taking shape, but not without challenges. The Entar were no longer the dominant power, but remnants of their empire still clung to life. And with every victory humanity achieved, more species began to question if Earth's rise to power would bring with it the same darkness they had fought against. Could they trust humanity? Could they trust Maya to lead them into a new era? The pressure on Maya was palpable. Her every decision, every action was scrutinized. And as she stood before the Council of the Galactic Alliance, it was clear that even her allies weren't sure if they could fully embrace the idea of a human-led future. The galaxy was still full of those who feared what humans might become. Cadet Ellis, the voice of the Zorathian representative, Velantra, broke the silence. Your people speak of peace, of unity, but there are those among us who wonder if humanity is truly prepared to lead. You have proven yourself in battle, yes. But leadership is more than just fighting. It's about understanding the delicate balance of power, of knowing when to use force and when to hold back. Maya stood tall, her gaze unwavering. The Zorathian words were sharp, but not without merit. Leadership wasn't just about being the strongest. It was about wisdom, restraint, and a deep understanding of the galaxy's complex politics. I understand your concerns, Velantra, Maya said, her voice steady. But humanity's strength has always been in our ability to adapt. We may have fought for our place in the stars, but we know the value of cooperation. We know what it means to fight for something bigger than ourselves. The council room was still, the air thick with tension. But Maya's words weren't just spoken to Velantra. They were for every species present, every leader who doubted that humanity's strength could be a force for good. I didn't come here to rule. I came here to show you that we are willing to work with you to build a future together, Maya continued. But trust, like peace, is something that must be earned, and we are ready to earn it. As the meeting concluded, Maya felt a sense of satisfaction that was tempered by the weight of what lay ahead. It was one thing to speak of unity, but another to actually make it happen. The galaxy was a complex web of competing interests, and every step Maya took would determine whether humanity would be accepted as true equals, or whether they would forever be seen as the dangerous upstart. Walking out of the council chamber, Maya was met by her fellow cadets, including Jalen Kaur, who had watched her grow throughout the trials. He had been a skeptic when they first met, dismissing her as another arrogant human, but now Maya saw a flicker of respect in his eyes. You're handling this better than I thought you would, Jalen said, offering a rare, approving nod. But I still don't know if I believe in this whole unity thing. The galaxy isn't ready for peace. Maya met his gaze. Then we make them ready, she said quietly, her words laced with quiet conviction. We show them what's possible when we work together. The following weeks brought a new challenge. Maya's team was called to assist in stabilizing a newly liberated world, a planet once under Entar control. Though the Entar had been defeated, many systems were left in chaos. This planet, known as Varmor, was on the brink of anarchy. The local population, long oppressed, struggled to find their footing in the aftermath of their captor's fall. Maya's task was clear: lead her team in bringing order to Varmor, but not through force. This was a mission of diplomacy, of building trust where it had been shattered. She was tasked with leading the reconstruction of the planet's government, working with the various factions that had once been enemies under the Entar's rule. The task was daunting. The factions on Varmor were not easily united. Old grudges ran deep, and every step Maya took was met with resistance. The idea of a human-led effort was met with suspicion. The galaxy had never seen a species like humanity, unpredictable, resourceful, and in some eyes too dangerous to lead. Days turned into weeks as Maya worked tirelessly with her team. She negotiated, listened, and above all, kept her temper in check. The people of Varmor had seen enough violence. They didn't need a reminder of what destruction could look like. They needed hope. One evening, after another tense meeting with the factions, Maya stood at the edge of the ruined city, looking out over the horizon. The sky was dark, lit only by distant stars, and for the first time since arriving, she felt the weight of the responsibility pressing down on her. I thought I knew what it meant to fight, Maya whispered to herself. But this is different. Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft footsteps of her team approaching. Jalen Kaur was the first to speak, his voice low. "You've done well, Maya," he said, his usual stern tone replaced with something softer, more sincere. "The others may not see it yet, but what you're doing here matters. You're giving them a chance." Maya didn't look at him, her eyes still fixed on the horizon. "I don't know if we can change everything overnight. I can't make them trust us, but we have to try." Jalen nodded, standing beside her. "We've been fighting for this galaxy to change, but you're showing them that it's not just about fighting anymore. It's about what comes after." Maya stood there for a long time, her mind turning over the challenges ahead. She had proven herself in battle, survived the trials, and faced impossible odds. But the real test was now. It was in moments like this, in the quiet moments between the battles, that true leadership was forged. She was ready for what came next, but she also knew that the road ahead would not be easy. There would be more challenges, more moments where she would doubt herself, and more people who would question humanity's place in the galaxy. But Maya wasn't afraid of those challenges. She had survived a Deathworld, and now she would lead humanity through the greatest challenge of all, making the galaxy believe in their future. Maya Ellis felt the weight of the stars pressing down on her. The galaxy had begun to listen. Humanity was no longer just a symbol of survival. They were becoming a force that couldn't be ignored. But even as humanity made its mark, old wounds festered and new challenges arose. As Maya stood in the command center, gazing at the screens flashing with data from across the galaxy, she knew that this new era came with consequences. There were those who didn't want the galaxy to change, and they would stop at nothing to make sure humanity didn't rise. It had been several months since the summit, and while alliances were forming, not all was well. The peace was fragile, and despite humanity's efforts to show their strength as leaders, there were still factions that refused to trust them. Some believed that humans, with their unpredictable nature, were a threat too dangerous to lead. Even within the Galactic Alliance, whispers began to grow. Some species feared what humanity might become once they had power. As Maya walked through the bustling halls of the Academy, she felt the burden of responsibility settling in. The mission on Varmor had shown her just how difficult peace would be. The people of Varmor had needed help, and they had looked to her for guidance. Yet even there, not everyone was convinced. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about making the galaxy a place where all species could coexist, but that dream was being tested in ways Maya couldn't have imagined. Jalen Kaur approached her, his footsteps echoing in the quiet corridor. "You're looking tired, Cadet Ellis," he said, his voice softer than usual. Maya smiled faintly, though the exhaustion was evident in her eyes. "I don't think tired is the word for it," she replied, her voice steady. "It feels like the weight of the galaxy is sitting on my shoulders. We're building something, but I don't know if everyone is willing to let us finish it." Jalen's face softened with understanding. The galaxy is full of people who don't want change. Some will always want things to stay the same, even if it means living under a tyrant. "I know," Maya said, her voice firm. "But we've already shown them that we can lead. We've proven that we can change things. Now we need to show them that we're not just strong, we're trustworthy." "You've already done that," Jalen said, his tone quiet but firm. "But trust takes time, and that's something the galaxy doesn't have much of." The following day, Maya was called into a meeting with the Council of the Galactic Alliance. The air was tense as she entered the room. Representatives from dozens of species sat in their seats, each one watching her carefully. The tension was palpable. This wasn't just another diplomatic meeting. This was a critical turning point. Velantra, the Zorathian leader who had once questioned Maya's leadership, spoke first. "Cadet Ellis, we have been watching humanity's progress closely. But there is a growing concern in the Council that your people may be acting too swiftly. You speak of unity, but you fail to recognize the deep divides that still exist among us. Humanity's rise to power has not gone unnoticed, but neither has the risk it poses." Maya felt the familiar sting of skepticism in Velantra's words. She had expected this. The galaxy wasn't going to roll over and accept humanity as a leader, not yet. "I understand your concerns," Maya began, her voice steady. "But humanity has never sought power for the sake of control. We've fought for our survival, yes. But more than that, we fight for a future where all species, no matter their size or strength, have a voice." "Your words are noble, Cadet Ellis," Velantra replied, her eyes sharp. "But words alone will not ease the fears of those who have lived under the Entar for generations. Trust is earned, and there are those among us who question whether humanity has earned it." Maya stood tall, refusing to back down. If we are to build a new future, we must start by understanding one another. The past cannot control us. We've learned from it, and now we must lead with that knowledge. The room fell silent. Maya could feel the eyes of the galaxy's most powerful species on her. This was more than just a conversation. This was a battle for the soul of the galaxy, and Maya wasn't about to let it slip away. As the council meeting ended, Maya found herself surrounded by whispers and glances. The divide between those who supported humanity and those who feared it had never been so clear. Despite her words, the doubts remained. The galaxy wasn't ready to accept that humanity might lead without imposing its will. Back in the academy, Maya walked to her quarters, her mind racing. The weight of the future pressed on her shoulders. She had come so far, but now it felt like the hardest part of her journey was just beginning. She couldn't afford to show weakness. She had to keep moving forward, keep showing them that humanity wasn't just about survival. They were about hope, about building something better. As she sat down at her desk, her communicator buzzed. It was from President Marquez. "Maya," Marquez's voice crackled through the speaker. "We've received reports from the outer colonies. There's unrest. Some of the systems that were liberated by the rebellion are now turning against us. They fear that humanity is moving too fast, that we are trying to take over." Maya's heart sank. The last thing she wanted was to create enemies. "How bad is it?" she asked. "Bad enough that we may have to send a peacekeeping force," Marquez replied. "We can't afford to let things spiral out of control, but sending troops could make everything worse." Maya leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. "We can't let the galaxy descend into chaos, but we also can't force them to follow us. We need to find a way to unite them without making them feel threatened." Marquez was silent for a moment. "I'm afraid it's not that simple. There are those who will never accept humanity's rise. Some of them have the power to make things very difficult for us." Maya's eyes hardened. She had heard the warnings, but now it was becoming real. The galaxy was divided, and she was standing at the center of it. "Then we will show them that humanity is worth trusting," she said, her voice firm. "We'll prove that we can lead not through power, but through strength of character." The next few days were filled with urgent meetings, diplomatic efforts, and quiet discussions with key allies. Maya knew that the road ahead would not be easy. The galaxy was fractured, and not all of the fractures could be healed through diplomacy. Some species were already plotting behind the scenes, planning their next move, and Maya would need to act quickly if she wanted to maintain the fragile peace. But one thing was certain: humanity had fought too hard to get this far to be turned back now. Maya Ellis, the human from a Deathworld, wasn't going to let anything, or anyone, stand in the way of building a new future for the galaxy. The days following the council meeting were the most challenging of Maya's life. The once hopeful alliances that humanity had forged across the galaxy were beginning to show cracks. The growing tensions, fueled by distrust and fear, were becoming harder to ignore. Factions that had once stood by humanity's side now began to question their intentions. The hard truth settled in. While some species were eager to embrace the new order, others were desperate to hold on to the old power structures, afraid of what humanity's rise could mean for them. As Maya stood in the command center, her gaze drifting over the data reports streaming across the screen, she couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy was on the brink of something far more dangerous than just a political conflict. The balance of power had shifted, and humanity, despite all they had done to earn their place, was being forced to prove themselves once more. The message was clear: peace would not come easily. Humanity had shown strength, but now they had to prove their worth as leaders who didn't just conquer with force, but led with wisdom and compassion. On Earth, President Marquez had issued a call for a meeting with the top commanders and diplomats of the Galactic Alliance. Maya had been invited to the gathering, though the room felt heavy with unspoken tensions. The walls of the conference room seemed to close in as she took her seat at the table, the eyes of the galaxy's most powerful species fixed on her. She knew this moment was crucial. She was no longer just a cadet, no longer just a symbol of humanity's strength. Now she had to be a voice of reason, someone who could bridge the growing divide. Marquez stood, her expression grave. "It's clear that the peace we fought for is slipping through our fingers. We've united some, but the rest—" She let the sentence trail off, as if the weight of the problem was too much to express in words. Maya didn't respond right away. She knew the pressure. She understood the fears. Humanity was no longer an insignificant species on the outskirts of the galaxy. They had forced their way into the center of galactic politics, but now that they were here, it was harder than she had imagined to hold on to the trust they had so quickly gained. "We cannot let fear divide us," Maya said, her voice firm, cutting through the silence that had fallen over the room. "There will always be those who fear change, but if we let that fear rule us, the galaxy will remain fractured. We must find a way to unite them, to show them that our strength doesn't come from dominance, but from cooperation." Maya's words hung in the air, and the room remained silent for a long moment. The representatives of the Kralrath, the Zorathians, and even some of the more neutral species seemed to be weighing her words. But the Zeorosians, an ambitious and power-hungry race, were already muttering among themselves, their suspicion clear. "You ask us to trust humans," one of the Zeorosian diplomats sneered, his voice sharp. "Your people have already taken what they wanted. Do you expect us to just hand over the rest of the galaxy to you?" Maya's gaze didn't falter. She had faced accusations like these before. Back on Earth, when humanity had first begun to push back against the Entar, many had doubted them too. But Maya had learned one thing above all else. Strength wasn't just about what you did in battle. It was about how you stood in moments like these when the stakes were high and the pressure threatened to break you. "We're not here to take anything," Maya said, her tone calm but unyielding. "We're here to build a future, one where every species has a voice, where no one has to live in fear. If you can't see that, then maybe we don't belong in this alliance after all." The Zeorosian representative bristled, but Maya held her ground. The others in the room were listening now. Even the Zorathians, who had been the most skeptical of humanity's role in the galaxy, seemed to be thinking hard about her words. Over the next few weeks, tensions continued to rise. The planet Varmor, which Maya and her team had helped stabilize, had begun to show signs of rebellion again. The factions that had fought for freedom were now fighting each other. Old wounds were reopened, and the once promising efforts to rebuild the planet now seemed to be unraveling. Maya knew that if she couldn't help Varmor find peace, the rest of the galaxy would start to see humanity's efforts as a failure. The very foundation of the Galactic Alliance was at stake. Humanity had to lead, but how could they unite a galaxy that seemed intent on remaining divided? She decided to return to Varmor. She would not let the planet or her mission fall apart. This was the test, not just of humanity's strength, but of its ability to lead. And Maya, who had once faced down the fiercest creatures on Earth, was ready to face this new challenge head-on. Arriving on Varmor, Maya was greeted by a scene of chaos. The streets were filled with unrest, the remnants of the old Entar loyalists clashing with the new leaders who had fought for freedom. It wasn't just a fight for resources or power anymore. It was a fight for control of the narrative. Who would shape the future of Varmor? Who would decide what kind of society it would become? Maya met with the local leaders trying to mediate the situation, but the distrust was palpable. "You were supposed to bring peace," one of the rebel leaders snapped. "Now look at what you've done. You've only brought more chaos." Maya's eyes were hard, her resolve firm. "I didn't bring chaos. I came here to help you rebuild. But rebuilding doesn't mean controlling everything. It means letting people have a say in their future, even if it's hard." The meeting lasted for hours, but slowly Maya's words began to take root. She wasn't trying to force a solution on them. She was offering them a chance to work together, to compromise. It wasn't easy, and the wounds were deep, but by the end of the day, there was a fragile agreement in place. As the days went by, Maya watched as the first steps toward peace were taken. The factions that had fought so bitterly were now sitting down to negotiate. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And for the first time since the rebellion, Varmor was beginning to see a glimpse of hope. As she stood outside the meeting hall, watching the sun set over the planet, Maya felt the weight of what had been accomplished. It wasn't a grand victory. It was the beginning of something far greater, the first step toward a united galaxy. A galaxy where humanity was no longer just surviving, but leading. The weeks that followed the delicate peace agreement on Varmor were tense. The fragile truce Maya had brokered on the war-torn planet was a step in the right direction, but the galaxy was far from ready to embrace the future she had promised. Humanity had proven itself a strong, capable force, but strength alone wouldn't unite the galaxy. Maya knew that peace required more than just negotiations. It required trust, and trust was a rare commodity in a galaxy that had been ruled by fear for so long. Back at the Galactic Academy, Maya stood before a group of new cadets, her role now shifting from student to mentor. The cadets, many of them from species she had fought beside, looked up to her as a hero. She had become a symbol of humanity's resilience and leadership, and the weight of that responsibility wasn't lost on her. As she addressed the new recruits, her voice was steady, but beneath the surface, there was a storm of thoughts and emotions. "The future of the galaxy will depend on your ability to adapt," she said, her gaze sweeping across the room. "We've faced challenges. Some of you may already know what it's like to survive in hostile environments, but now we are tasked with something greater, leading others through those challenges." Her words were meant to inspire, but in truth, she was speaking as much to herself as she was to them. The galaxy was a place of endless possibility, but it was also a place of deep fractures. Maya knew that humanity's place among the stars would be tested in ways she couldn't even foresee. A few days later, Maya received an urgent message from President Marquez. The situation was escalating. Despite the progress made on Varmor, the galaxy's undercurrent of distrust toward humanity was growing. A group of rogue factions, led by remnants of the Entar and other disillusioned species, had formed an alliance. Their aim was clear: destabilize the Galactic Alliance and drive humanity out of the leadership role it had fought so hard for. Maya stared at the message for a long time, her mind racing. The galaxy was on the brink of chaos again. Humanity's rise had been hard-fought, but now it seemed like they were being pushed back into the shadows. "Why now?" she whispered to herself. "Why after everything we've done?" She understood the fear, the uncertainty. Some species had never known peace, and the idea of a human-led galaxy felt like an insurmountable change. But Maya knew she couldn't back down. She had faced insurmountable odds before, and she had come out stronger on the other side. She would do it again, not just for humanity, but for the galaxy itself. As the rebellion gained momentum, Maya took charge. She knew the Alliance needed a show of strength, but not in the way the enemy expected. She couldn't afford to fight fire with fire. Instead, she used the very values humanity had fought for: unity, cooperation, and a willingness to listen. Maya called a summit, inviting representatives from all the factions, including the rebellious ones. The stakes were higher than ever, and the fear of another war hung in the air. Some factions refused to attend, but Maya wouldn't back down. She wasn't going to let violence win again. When the summit began, Maya stood before the galaxy's most powerful figures: the Kralrath, the Zorathians, the Zeorosians, and others who had been either allies or enemies in the past. The room was charged with tension. She could feel the weight of every eye on her, their skepticism heavy in the air. "Thank you for coming," Maya began, her voice calm but unwavering. "I know many of you are here out of fear, out of distrust, but I ask you to listen. I ask you to look at what we've accomplished together, to think about what we could accomplish if we stopped fighting each other." The room was silent. Her words seemed to hang in the air. "I understand the fear," she continued. "I've seen it. We're all afraid of change, but we have to make a choice. We can continue to live in the past, always looking over our shoulder, or we can step forward together and build something better." A murmur rippled through the room, but it wasn't rejection. It was something else: uncertainty. They were listening. Maya's words, though simple, were cutting through the noise. She wasn't asking for their trust, she was earning it. As the meeting progressed, the discussion turned toward solutions. The rogue factions didn't give up easily, but Maya's calm demeanor and the support of the Alliance's more moderate leaders began to shift the tone. It wasn't an immediate victory, but after hours of debate, Maya and the others reached an agreement. The galaxy would undergo a series of reforms that would include more representation for the smaller factions, more transparency in decision-making, and a commitment to ensuring that no one was left behind. It wasn't perfect. There were still many unresolved issues, and distrust still lingered. But it was a start. For the first time in a long while, the galaxy had taken a step back from the edge of war. Humanity's leadership, though questioned and tested, had proven itself not just in strength, but in wisdom and perseverance. As the summit concluded, Maya stood outside, gazing up at the stars. The negotiations had been intense, and the road ahead remained uncertain, but she had done it. She had done what humanity had always done best: pushed through adversity and shown the galaxy that they could be trusted. The peace wouldn't last forever, nothing ever did. But humanity had proven that it could fight not just with weapons, but with words, with understanding, and with a willingness to change. Jalen Kaur, who had been by her side through every step of this journey, walked up beside her. "You've done it," he said, his voice gruff but filled with admiration. "You've shown them that humanity's worth trusting." Maya turned to him, a small smile tugging at her lips. "We've shown them that humanity is more than just survivors. We're leaders, and we're not going anywhere." Jalen nodded, his expression thoughtful. I never thought I'd say this, but I think you're right. This galaxy, it's going to be a different place now. Maya's smile grew. It already is. In the days that followed, the galaxy's response to humanity's leadership began to shift. The reforms made at the summit were implemented, and slowly but surely, the tension that had once defined the galaxy began to fade. Humanity's role in the galaxy was now secure, but more than that, they had set a new example for how to lead, how to overcome the darkest parts of their history, and how to move forward together. But Maya knew that the work wasn't done. The galaxy was a vast and complex place, and there would always be new challenges. But she was ready for them. Humanity had fought for their place in the stars, and now they were going to make sure that place was one of hope, unity, and strength. And she would lead them every step of the way.